has the crushing real estate market in Greater Toronto finally start to slow down the crash? Hi everyone, Ian here. So in June, we've seen Toronto real estate data finally took a turning point, and we want to take a deep dive into what's going on in the real estate market to see if we're finally start to see some glimpse of hope, right, for the real estate market. We've had a really bad 2025 so far. From January to May, it has been a bad market or a worse market. Every month it gets worse. So June has it finally started to slow down the worsening of the market, and do we see some hopes? Okay, let's take a look at the data. Before the data, let's take a quick look at a few examples of our recent sold property listings. So this is a condo in Mississauga and Scarborough, semi-detached. And this is a condo in North York, Willowdale area. This is Vaughan, Transit City. And we also sold a condo at near North York, Don Mills and Shepherd. This is downtown, and this is a condo in Richmond Hill. You can see there's a lot of condos sold recently. So does that mean the condo market? I thought the condo market is the worst, right? So let's take a look at the data to see if it can help us explain that question. And we'll dive deeper and deeper in the future videos. So stay tuned to our channel. You will find a lot of important information about this month's data. So on the screen, you'll see that here is a year-over-year summary for between June and May. And in terms of number of sales, June had 6,243 sales. And you can see that's very similar to the last year in June and also last month in May. They're both about 6,300 sales. So the buyers are staying about the same as before. Now, new listings, this is all new sellers came to market, 19,839. That is a little bit more than last year, but quite a bit less than last month. So that's interesting. May, we've had 21,800. And June, we had 19,800. Okay, so 2,000 less sellers. And this trend has been going up straight line from January to May. June, it finally slowed down. Okay, we'll take a look at the graph later on, but notice this is a new trend. Sellers are slowing down. Finally, it may be because seasonality, it may be because other factors, but let's keep watching. So active listing, this is the grand total of real estate listings on the market, 31,600. That's still the highest point. Okay, comparing to last year at 24,000, we are 30% higher than last year. But compared to last month at 31,000, we're only about 600 more listings than last year. But keep in mind, we had also less new listings came to market, right? And we have about the same number of buyers as last month. So that's good. So that means the active listing growing has finally slowed down. It's becoming more flat between May and June. And that's mainly because we had less sellers came to market in June. Okay, so finally sellers are slowing down in their pace of putting their properties on the market, which is what we want to see. And in terms of average price, we have $1.1 million on average. And right now, for comparing to last month in May, we have 1.12. Okay, so we're 20,000 less than last month on average price, which is kind of what we see in the market. Prices are coming down. And compared to last year in June, 1.16, we're at 1.10. We're at negative 5.4% down, okay, from last year. So we're down from last month, we're down from last year, and that's exactly what we see in the market. So you may wonder, okay, how bad is the number of sales right now? 6,200, even though it looks the same as last month or last year. But if you look at a longer history, you'll see that right now the number of sales is the lowest in 25 years. Okay, so last time we have this little sales is the year 2000. Okay, that's 25 years ago. And all along the middle, even though we've had many real estate ups and downs, the financial crisis, we've all had better sales. And keep in mind, our population right now is the highest as it's ever been, something like 41 million people, right? 20 years ago, we did not have 41 million people, right? So it kind of shows you that how little buyers are actually taking an action. And in terms of number of active listings, so we have 31,000, right? And you can see the last time we had this many listings was 1995, okay? 1995, and that's 30 years ago. So we have the highest number of sellers in the last 30 years, and we have the lowest number of buyers in the last 25 years. So that means right now explains why our market feels very tough and very slow. And so let's take a look at the breakdown between the different areas, okay, and between condos and detached, and between 416 and 905, okay. So let's take a look. 416 is Toronto area, 905 is the surrounding area. You'll notice that 416 actually doing better than last year in terms of sales. For detached, semi-detached, and townhouse, 416 area, Toronto actually have more sales than last year, especially for semi-detached. We can see we have almost 20% more sales, 20% more buyers making transactions. So that's interesting, right? So market is slow, but Toronto freehold is actually doing quite well. There's a lot of transactions going on. Even though, yes, the price has gone down about 5 to 6%, well, except semi-detached, which because there's a lot of buyers, the price didn't really go down. But detached and townhouse in Toronto, the price gone down 5 to 6%, which is in line with market average. But there's a lot of transactions. That means a lot of people who were buying the suburbs now came back to Toronto to buy real estate, which shows you that, hey, location matters, right? When it's convenient, when it's central, people still want real estate properties in central locations. And on the other hand, if you take a look at 905 area, and sales is down 5 to 6%, semi-detached is even negative 13%. So that means people who are buying semi-detached in 905 area, which is like a very starter home, right? Starter home in 905 area, they're actually moving into Toronto, right? Toronto positive 18%. 905 negative 13%. Okay, so that's a good comparison to show you where the buyers are going. They're going to buy their starter home in Toronto instead of 905 area. And 905 area, all the property types, the average price has gone down over 6%, right? So you can see that right now Toronto in general is doing a little bit better than 905, despite what you might believe. Toronto having, increased their property taxes, Toronto having higher crime rates, Toronto having lots of issues, right? But people are actually voting with their money that Toronto is actually more favored, more desired place to live for especially these entry-level freehold homes, right? Now, for condos, you can see that between 416 and 905 area, they both came down 2.6% and 2.3% in terms of number of sales. And the average price, Toronto has came down year over year 4.3%, 905 has gone down 4.9%. So that means condos are similar behavior between Toronto and 905. So it means people are still, not buying the areas about the same behavior. Okay, the buyers are not shifting between one or the other. And in general, you can see that condos in general, the number of, like for example in 905, right? The condos have came down in sales only 2.3%, but the rest of the freehold has came down 5, 6, or even 13%. Okay, and the number of average price is actually gone down more in the freehold sector than the condo sector. And that's why you see in the beginning of this episode, you see a few of our recent condo listings sold, and a lot of them are condo listings getting sold, right? Because they're actually condos have had a worse market in the past 2 years, and it has came down to a point where people are starting to realize, hey, you know what, condos not a bad deal, right? They're seeing some good condo deals, and people are starting to pick them up a little bit more than the freehold sector. Freehold, the market is still kind of crashing down, but the condos, because they crashed down earlier, people are starting to see, hey, there's some good deals going on, and if your listing is priced right and it's a good deal, people are starting to pick up on it. And that's why we were able to actually, through our intense marketing efforts, we're actually able to sell a good number of our condo listings in the past month or so, right? And now if we take a look at the graphical format of the same data, we can see that sales is staying put, same as last year or last month, and new listings, it's the number of sellers coming down a bit, and the average price finally start to go down. And active listings, the speed of increasing has finally slowed down. It's starting to taper off, right? Which is a good sign, because if the active listings keep shooting up, then that's a problem, right? So you may wonder, hey, I thought this year we had a bad year in real estate. Why is average price has been going up every month except June? That's a good question. Because reality is we see average price has been going down this year from January to June, right? So why does the data show up and then only June is down? So let's take a look at between condo and detached comparison, okay? So if you compare condo and detached, you'll see that from the beginning of the year to June, the proportion of sales between detached is the top, Condo is the bottom. Condo has been staying stable in number of sales. Detached has been going up a lot. So the proportion of sales that's detached, which is more expensive, has been increasing between January, February, March, April, and May. So when you sell more of the more expensive item, your average price will look higher. That's why the average price has been going up, right? But between May and June, finally, detached and condos sales proportions have remained about the same, remained flat. And that's why you see the true color behind the data. The average price finally dropped, right? So that's quite interesting to notice what's going on the grand total of average price versus what's actually happening in the market, right? So average price is going down. It shows going up because we've been selling more detached. And if we take a look at other metrics, like for example, if we take a look at the active listings between condos and detached, you'll see that condo active listings in June has actually been very similar. In fact, it has gone down a little bit from 10,523 to 10,501, right? So condo active listings actually staying put. It's the detached that keeps going up a little bit from 13,800 to 14,100, right? So detached is the culprit behind the small increase in active listing. So condos finally slowing down, kind of tapering off, is a great sign. I mean, we'll have to observe if this is just a seasonal thing, seasonality that caused it, but whatever the reason is, finally the worsening of the market has slowed down, start to taper off. It's an important signal we need to pay attention to, right? It could stay this way, it could become bad or become even better in the future, and that will help us to better understand the trend of the market. And finally, we want to take a look at the months of inventory, right, for the two markets. So we can see that condo and detached, the top one is condo. Condo in generally have a slower market, right, which is why the months of inventory is higher. But you can see condo from May to June has came down from 7.1 to 7.0. Detached is gone up from 4.6 to 4.7, right? So you can see that between the two markets, this month in June, condos is actually not doing any worse than detached. And that's why we see a lot of condo sales recently has been quite successfully, right? And so this kind of shows you what's going on in the market. And if you take a look at the average price, you can see that average price in condo has been fairly stable. In fact, this month, the average price actually didn't even go down. It went from 683,000 for condo to 696. So 1 month does not make a trend, but at least it didn't go down, right? But detached, it keeps going down from 1.43 to 1.39. That's a pretty significant drop in average price. In fact, that's like probably the bigger drop comparing to the previous month, right? From 1.45 to 1.44, 1.43, and 1.39. So we can see that detached market is actually suffering a bit more than the condo market because the condo market has probably bottomed out a little earlier, right? So going forward, how it's going to play out, I cannot predict right now, but at least it's good to see that there is some signs of slowing down on the worsening of the real estate market in GTA, which is what we want to see, right? Because any market, when it's getting worse, it has to stop getting worse before we can even talk about the possibility of getting better, right? So that's something we need to keep watching the market for. So in the next video, we're going to break down between the condo and detached market to see which areas are actually doing better, which areas are actually doing worse. Because when it's tapering off, when it's flattening, there's got to be some area doing better than the other areas, right? There's got to be finally some areas start to improve. Let's find out what they are. Stay tuned. Until next time. Ciao.